want to give a special thanks to Zapsplat.com for providing the sound effects and opening music to the chapters. On to the story.
Hi, and welcome back to the novel Blue. In this chapter 6 entitled Captain David Cummins, Dr. Hudson's group sees that her thesis is indeed the real deal, and all hell breaks loose. By the end of June 2014, the Voices program had deciphered the elementary call response vocalizations of not only blue and sperm whales of the northern Pacific Ocean, but also those of the smaller cetaceans such as the minke, which also happened to be the number one targeted whale by Japanese whaling ships, the elusive Cuvier's beaked whale, and the second largest of them all, the fin whale. With their language and behavior now tied together, an interesting pattern had taken shape, one that from an evolutionary standpoint made no sense. Like in the Serengeti, where the larger mammals like elephants and Cape buffalo offered protection for the smaller wildebeest and gazelle by simple virtue of proximity, so too did the blue and sperm whale provide a certain level of security. But security from what? To answer this question, it was imperative that Tim Wiley and I get back into the field as soon as possible before the Voices tags started to dislodge, sometime around the first week of September. It would be dishonest, but not quite provable, if I said that I regretted bearing witness to the Yoshikawa Maru sinking. I can reconcile that the honest answer is counter to the values of my family and colleagues, because I can reason that the whales had the right. Fortunately, I won't have to stand up in a court of law and defend that point of view. So there we were, July 10th, 41 degrees 29, 15.48 north by 146 degrees 30, 35.54 east longitude, just east of Hokkaido, Japan. Jim and I had been allotted research time on the Northern Pacific Cetacean Protective League's research and activist vessel, the Sea Dancer. Like the Sea Shepherd organizations, overt activism in the protection of sea mammals, the NPCPL, has a record of necessary aggression when necessary. However, it confines itself to the Northern Pacific Gyre. I had agreed to accept the invitation arranged by Dr. Bayous on one condition. While I am on board, they cannot engage in any protective action against a whaling vessel in international waters. It was, how shall I say, desirable to not get caught up in some major incident, not even 1 year into my career. The captain of the Sea Dancer, David Cummins, agreed to my request. On the afternoon of July 12th, Tim and I were below decks receiving Voices data of the tags V1 through V5. On the bridge, David Cummins received a radio call informing him that a Japanese whaling vessel was 2 hours south of his position, tracking a pod of minke whales. Here's the interesting part. If the ambient noise filters on the tags weren't so damn efficient, Tim and I would have picked this up as well. It was not to be. We were picking up the vocalization from the same pod of winged whales, as they're affectionately called, but we could not know the position of a whale that was not tagged. In the eyes of Captain Cummins, this tracking of the minkies was a precursor to poaching, and he was duty-bound to record it, even if it meant he could not directly intervene. He presumed that as long as he did not engage the vessel in any way that this didn't violate his obligation to me, he corrected course and headed in the direction of the Japanese vessel without letting me know. 90 minutes later, with the Japanese vessel in view, David had 2 of his crew members at the ready with digital video cameras. Seconds before he would have gunned his Sea Dancer closer, an event unfolded that would change his life, career, and beliefs. At a distance of 200 yards, directly in our path, a large blue whale surfaced to spy hop the Sea Dancer. A blue whale with a Voices GPS tag on it. Of course, the captain could not see this. In my own defense, and negligence if it pleases you to judge it so, I was only reading spectrographs below deck with Tim. It had not dawned on us to know the location of our whales. David logically backed off the throttle on his ship, bringing her from a crawl to a complete stop 50 yards from the whale. The whale held his position. At that exact moment, the vocalizations of the tagged whale stopped. They just stopped. Why have we stopped moving? Why have the whales stopped speaking to each other? I asked, looking curiously at the monitors as if there was a glitch of some sort. This was instantly followed up with a request from the ship's intercom. Dr. Hudson, to the bridge. Keep monitoring in case they start up their vocalizations again, I ordered Tim as I headed out the cable hatch. When I got to the bridge, I was greeted by the sight of a wide-eyed David Cummins pointing straight ahead to the blue whales spy-hopping us, with the Japanese whaling vessel about a half-mile ahead. What does that mean, Dr. Hudson? The captain asked, pointing out the obvious reason why the Sea Dancer came to a stop. I don't exactly know why my initial reaction was one of annoyance, but I asked him curtly, what were you doing? Forgetting that I was a guest on his ship. Much to his credit, a credit that he is still worthy of today, he did not pull rank. Instead, he spoke honestly. We were heading towards that whaling ship, which I had been informed is tracking a pod of minke whales, likely for the purpose of poaching. I assure you, Doctor, we were not going to engage them per our understanding. But I must document what the vessel's name is and what their intent is. But, pointing to the blue whale, which I suspected was Bart, what does that mean? In a tone closer to a confession, don't take that legally. It's just a metaphor. Then in response to his question, I said, you were doing exactly what the whale intended for you to do, and that is to stand down. You must understand, they know our intent. If you're a sloop sailing out of San Diego to the Sea of Cortez, they know you are benign. If you're the Voyager Whale Watch ship out of Redondo Beach, they know that you come with only fascination and respect. They know it, and in kind, return respect. Cargo ships are different. While these can pose a threat to whales caught on the surface of the water, these two are benign enough. You must understand, David, that these whales can recognize the sound of your specific engine from 200 miles away. I assure you, they know who you are, and right now they want you to stand down. Obviously, now was not the time to delve into my thesis, right? I don't need to tell you, he said, pointing a finger at me, that I have devoted my life to helping them, and that is what I intend to do, his dedication apparent in his emotion. He had just finished his sentence when a second blue whale surfaced to spy hop the Japanese vessel 70 yards from the starboard quarter. Of this we had a clear view. That vessel had power down to a stop. That was when all of us aboard the Sea Dancer, except Tim Wiley below deck, saw them. The mixed pod of blues and sperm whales, not 20 feet below the surface of the water, all 30 yet strong, passed beneath us in the direction of the whaler. With a gentle hand on David's shoulder and a confident nod, I reassured him, I think they got this. His crew started filming from the main deck. Bart, in front of the Sea Dancer, slipped beneath the surface of the sea while the second blue held its position. When the whaling vessel moved forward to just within range for its grenade harpoon, this blue whale simply backed up, just 10 yards beyond range. It knew the exact distance that was required to avoid being impaled, and its insides exploded. The crew of the Sea Dancer watched from the main deck with an almost morbid curiosity. Just as the blue whale ended its spy hopping and dipped beneath the surface, the vocalizations being monitored by Tim below deck commenced again with one short 14 hertz burst that only Dr. Byers and I knew meant, now. Of course, I was not there to hear it. As in previous coordinated offensive attacks, 4 sperm whales began rocking the whaling vessel from the center of the hull on the starboard side. This resulted in the gunner being thrown to the deck below, breaking his neck on the guardrail before he fell, dead, into the sea. There was no cheering and no gasping from the crew, only shocked silence. The mixed pod now had these coordinated attacks down to an art form, as Dr. Bayous would later attest, getting the ship into a 90 degrees tilt by the third push, clearing the way for 6 blue whales to put the vessel into a full rotation. By the third rotation, all communication antennae had snapped off. By the fourth rotation, the vessel had taken on sufficient water that the blues, who had learned to take huge mouthfuls of water to increase their weight, simply mounted the ship in a display that all of the animal kingdom would recognize as a sign of dominance. With no choice available, the whaling ship submitted and began her sink to the bottom of the ocean with all her crew, except the gunner, sucked down by the vortex. The crew of the Sea Dancer had violated a cardinal rule of the sea, to give aid to another ship in obvious distress. What could they have done? I mean, even now I tell you the answer is nothing. David Cummins wiped a few tears. I didn't have any. I did, however, quickly reassure him that there was nothing in his power to have stopped it. At this, he quickly corrected my perception of his reaction. It's not that I care about that crew. It's just that somehow I always knew. I always knew that they possessed the ability to defend themselves. Why did it take them so long? Good question, I told him, and a half-truth that I think they have known for a long time. Now it was time for damage control. Turning to his crew members who had been filming the attack, he barked at them, "Delete that fucking tape now!" Before he radioed, "Mayday, Mayday, this is the Sea Dancer." Finally, Tim Wiley made his way up to the bridge. What did I miss? A Japanese Coast Guard vessel, the Wakasa, was dispatched to the scene, and the Sea Dancer was ordered to stay in the area. The JCG would not arrive until sometime after 8 p.m. This gave us adequate time to get our cover story straight. The undisputed consensus was that the real story would not be told. However, the known and provable facts of what had happened needed to be woven into a cover story, and fast. Easily attainable via the captain's log and GPS coordinates was their proximity to the whaling ship. Fortunately, that distance, coupled with the fact that the Sea Dancer had no damage, put to rest any questions about whether David had, again, been pushing the envelope. I was troubled, to put it lightly, to learn in the midst of all that of something that happened 3 years earlier. He had his captain's license suspended for 90 days after some reckless maneuvering against another whaling vessel. No doubt the commanding officer of the frigate headed in our direction already knew the name of David Cummins. Also, it would be obvious that the Sea Dancer was not in this location by mere coincidence. The phone log telling Captain Cummins that the whaling ship was 2 hours south of their location would also be noted. The story that emerged from this discussion was moderately plausible, albeit not altogether responsible. When the Sea Dancer arrived on the scene for the purposes of monitoring the situation, it was apparent that no immediate whaling activity was going to occur. Consequently, the captain and crew, except for a watchman, retired to the galley for lunch. This took just 20 minutes. By the time they had returned topside, the whaling ship was simply gone. When the captain asked the watchman where it went, he was just as surprised. His excuse was that he was looking in the other direction, chain smoking, as was his bad habit. It was anybody's guess as to how long it would take the government of Japan to get a submersible camera down to inspect their property. Raising it was out of the question, since only Dr. Byers and I knew exactly what the Voices program was capable of doing. This information would not be volunteered. 2 hours before the Wakasa arrived, a Eurocopter AS-332 Japanese Coast Guard helicopter did a close flyby of the Sea Dancer and the area where their ship had gone down. Seeing no survivors in the water, it turned around and left the area. Richard Watson, the Sea Dancer's watchman, on whose shoulders the bulk of the cover-up rested, could not seem to smoke enough cigarettes. He was reassured by his captain. "You're going to do just fine, Rick." One last detail was almost forgotten. The memory cards of the video cameras needed to be destroyed. When this was done, we settled in for the anxious wait on the JCG, rehearsing our story until details that could trip us up were accounted for. That concludes Chapter 6.